Ace Bailey is this kind of kid that, like, his representative, his agent told him, hey, he told one of the top 5 teams not to pick him. And I'm thinking, where are the adults to help this kid?
Before Ace Bailey played a single NBA minute, his name got dragged into the wildest draft drama of the year. Headlines called him arrogant. Teams whispered about ultimatums. But the twist, the loudest decisions weren't his. They came from inside his own circle. One move nearly shaved millions off his rookie future and stamped a reputation he didn't earn. Tonight, we pull the thread that ties Ace, the Wizards, and one very powerful handler. Ace Bailey didn't arrive on the scene as a diva. He came as a worker. Coaches talked about his quiet focus, the extra reps, and the way he asked for film instead of favors. When his family moved from Tennessee to Georgia, he plugged into a different universe. McEachern High School, a national powerhouse that had already launched names and built pipelines. In that world, one figure had gravity: Omar Cooper. Cooper wasn't just the father of 5-star guard Sharife Cooper. He'd become a gatekeeper in Georgia basketball. He knew the trainers, the shoe circuits, the college assistants who mattered, the NBA people who called first. If you wanted the cleanest path from prep stardom to the pros, you kept Omar happy, or at least, you kept him close. Ace did both. He trusted him as a manager, not an agent, the kind of day-to-day consigliere who steers life choices, which school to pick, which brand to meet, who gets real, ... On paper, that setup sounds safe. Many lottery prospects hire a manager to handle distractions so they can focus on the game. But power concentrates in quiet places. The more doors Omar opened, the more rooms he controlled. His son's arc gave him even more credibility. If you can move a 5-star through the chaos of recruiting and into the draft, people listen. And in the background, a truth most teenagers never see. The line between support and control is thin. Ace wasn't naive. He was 18, navigating a business dressed up as a game. He chose work and trusted the adults to handle the rest. That trust would place him inside a machine he didn't design, one that could elevate a brand or bury a reputation with a couple of phone calls. For a while, it looked like the perfect partnership, until the draft clock started ticking, and the calls started shaping everything that came next, much faster than anyone expected. 2.
He's getting horrible advice. Reportedly, he's a good kid. But when the year started, he was considered the second best player.
Here's where the backstory stops being a resume and starts looking like a warning label. Omar Cooper's blueprint was first stress-tested on his own son, Sharife, a 5-star magnet at Auburn. Sharife walked in with fireworks and walked out with questions. The NCAA froze his first 12 games over alleged improper benefits and agent contact clouds that follow a player even after the sun comes back out. When he finally touched the floor, the magic was there in flashes, but the numbers and timing weren't kind. Scouts saw a highlight guard without the spacing, a small frame, trying to force a big narrative. The advice from people outside the bubble was simple: reset, return, rebuild the stock. Instead, the decision from inside the circle was louder: declare now. That choice rewrote everything. Sharife slid into the second round, bounced unlimited minutes, then drifted overseas. Not a failure. Plenty of players fight their way back from tougher maps, but a cautionary tale about speed, leverage, and who gets to hold the wheel. Through it all, Omar remained the architect, the voice in the room shaping timelines and outcomes. And that's the part that matters for Ace. Managers can be essential. They can also become echo chambers. When the same playbook rides again with a new star, the margin for error shrinks. Ace didn't copy Sheriff's path. He inherited the pressure of it. The lesson should have been patience. The plan became positioning. That's the difference between guidance and gravity. One helps you steer. The other pulls you whether you like it or not. By the time Ace's draft cycle heated up, Omar's influence wasn't theoretical. It had a track record, a reputation, and a way of making phones ring at the exact right or wrong time. And then came the week every franchise circled the moment when silence, cancellations, and a single preferred destination turned a pristine prospect into the headline nobody expected. Ace Bailey's stock sat in rare air top 3 chatter. The kind of upside that makes GMs stare at whiteboards until midnight. Then, in the tightest window before draft night, the noise changed shape. Reports spilled that Ace hadn't done a single private workout. Philadelphia, holding a premium slot and a perfect on-paper fit, got the call no team wants. The meeting and workout were canceled. Not rescheduled, canceled. The league's rumor mill doesn't wait for context. It writes a character in real time, entitled Diva, Poison, words that stick even when they're wrong. Omar pushed back publicly. Ace had interviewed with a wave of teams. He'd shown his game at the combine, and prospects decline workouts all the time. True, to a point. Last year, a top big reportedly skipped a meeting with a team he didn't want. But there's a canyon between selective meetings and a blanket freeze-out. This looked less like strategy and more like choreography, with a single spotlight waiting at the end of the stage. That light, according to multiple reports, belonged to Washington. The Wizards, an organization not exactly famous for patient development or long-view stability, suddenly became the preferred destination. Why? That's the mystery that made front offices frown. If you're grooming a franchise forward, Philadelphia's ecosystem with a young star guard makes basketball sense. Washington, by comparison, felt like a leap of faith. Unless the math had nothing to do with fit and everything to do with control. This is where leverage gets weird. Don't draft us calls or nuclear unless you're generational. Most execs will walk away rather than gamble on a no, but some will test their nerve. At no 5, Utah did exactly that, refusing to be pushed off its board. They took Ace. And the second he stepped in, he was professional, focused, unbothered by the circus his name had dragged in, which should have ended the story, except 5 days in September would turn that draft drama into a much darker theory about who really benefited from the chaos. If the play was to spook teams and slide Ace to Washington, Utah detonated it. Front offices had been warned off with whispers. Don't draft us. We won't report. That threat usually works only for the untouchables, the LeBron types who bend a draft room by existing. Ace wasn't that yet. He was a phenomenal prospect with questions every young forward has. Utah called the bluff at no 5. They trusted their board over the background noise and took him anyway. Here's the twist. Ace showed up. No holdout, no standoff. He stepped into the facility and got to work. Local reporting painted him as the opposite of the narrative: humble, obsessive, eager to learn. In other words, the exact teammate you want. Which begs the question, if the player is this easy to coach, who is doing the hardball? That's where the theory tightens around Omar. The idea, as many online framed it, was simple: starve the market, create drama, and direct the outcome. Not to a development lab like OKC or a proven contender like Philly, but to Washington, a franchise that, fairly or not, hasn't been known for building stars from scratch. Why? That's the gap. People filled with speculation, control, relationships, the promise of a bigger role and softer scrutiny, or something else entirely. Utah's move didn't just secure a cornerstone. It cracked the If Ace truly wouldn't report, the Jazz will take a public hit. They risk a wasted pick. Teams don't do that unless their intel says the blockade is manufactured. And the second Ace walked through the door, that intel looked prophetic. The narrative turned, not fully, but enough. And then, with the headlines cooling, 5 late September days lit the fuse again, this time pointing straight at Washington. And at a name that makes the whole timeline feel way too convenient. On September 19th, the Wizards announced a 2-way deal for Sharife Cooper. For casual fans, it was a line item. For people tracking this saga, it was a record scratch. Sharife hadn't logged NBA minutes since 2022 and had been bouncing around Europe. Washington wasn't exactly starving for undersized guards. Still 2-way signed, not impossible, just surprising. 5 days later, Ace Bailey cut ties with Omar Cooper. That sequence is why the whispers turned into a siren. Fans and pundits connected dots. If Omar had been steering Ace toward Washington, was it purely basketball? Or was there a side door for sure? The popular theory goes like this: get Ace to fall, without the Wizards trading assets. And in return, Sharife gets a shot back in the league. To be clear, that's speculation. No documents, no on-the-record confirmations. Just timing that refuses to sit quietly. There is an innocent read. Managers network. Relationships compound. Maybe Omar built rapport with Washington during Ace's cycle, and that goodwill earned Sharife a look on merit. That happens. But the problem with clean explanations is they struggle against messy time. If Ace tolerated public heat, draft day chaos, and lost money without firing Omar, why sever the relationship days after Sheriff's deal? Many believe Ace read the room and decided he couldn't risk being attached to any hint of manipulation. He protected the locker room before it ever formed. There's a practical layer. 2. Reputations don't reset in the NBA. They compound. A toxic camp tag can haunt a young star longer than a bad shooting week. By moving on, Ace told the league he wants standard governance. Agent handles contracts. Pro staff handles development, and managers don't script draft boards. It was a grown-up move, late, maybe, but decisive. Which brings the story back to the only thing that can bury a scandal: production. But reputations echo, and Ace is still paying down a tab he didn't open. Let's separate heat from light. The viral theory is spicy. Omar slow-rolled workouts, funneled Ace toward Washington, and whether explicitly or not, Sharif's 2-way became the unspoken kicker. It explains the canceled meetings, the preferred destination, and the strange confidence behind those "don't draft us" vibes. But here's the part that matters for Ace's future. Stories travel faster than proof. There are no public contracts linking the two moves, no email trails, no front office What we have is sequencing, and sequencing can feel like intent even when it's just a coincidence. That's why framing matters. Reports claim, people around the league believe. Rumors suggest those phrases exist for a reason. They acknowledge smoke without inventing fire. If you're Ace, the problem isn't only what happened, it's what sticks. Executives remember patterns more than press releases. A handler who tries to dictate the board. A prospect who seems insulated from normal process fare or not. That image lingers. Utah drafting him anyway bought time. Firing Omar bought credibility. The rest gets decided on hardwood. There's also the developmental angle. Washington would have offered touches and patience. Utah offers structure and defense-first identity. For a wing with star tools, the second path can be a gift. You earn trust with contested rebounds, rotations, and running lanes with purpose. That's how you overwrite narratives increment by increment. The theory can shout, but consistent tape whispers louder. But in the end, Ace doesn't need to litigate the internet. He needs to stack days. Show up early, leave late, talk less, defend more. Keep the circle tight and professional agent for deals. Team for development, mentors for reality checks. The league notices when the noise fades and the game scales, and yet reputations have inertia. Even as Ace turns the page, the bill for June's chaos hasn't been fully paid because the cost wasn't only draft slots. It was the label that could shadow a career. Scandals don't end when the headline disappears. They echo in rooms you never enter. A toxic camp flag changes how teams negotiate, how veterans welcome you, and how referees and media color close calls. That's the reputation debt Ace inherited. He didn't author the plot, but he's still responsible for the epilogue. The good news: the repayment plan is boring and brutally effective. First payment. Professionalism. Utah insiders described Ace as humble, coachable, and wired to work exactly the antidote to the diva script. That's not PR. That's repeatable behavior. Second payment. Role acceptance. Rookies who chase brand new star roles burn equity. Rookies who master the small things defensive assignments. Second efforts. Sprinting into early offense earn rope quickly. Third payment. Reliability. Be available. The best ability cliché is cliché because it is true. Ice baths, sleep, nutrition, the non-Instagram hours, that's how you make noise without making news. There's a communication piece too. Keep public comments tight and team. When speculation pops, let agents and organizations carry the statements. Fans will always debate conspiracies. Front offices read patterns. A year of quiet competence fixes more than 1,000 tweets. Money-wise, the slide from 3 to 5 may have shaved a couple of million off rookie-scale earnings. That stings, but it's not destiny. The real purse lives in the second contract. If Ace becomes a two-way wing who defends up and down, hits open threes, and creates rim pressure, he writes an 8-figure per year future and makes June look like loose change. That's the math of reputation recovery. Compound. Interest through consistency. And there's a human layer worth saying out loud. Young stars often meet business before they meet stability. Choosing better counsel isn't an admission of weakness. It's a declaration of adulthood. Ace made that call. Now the league watches for the sequel, which sets the stage for the final turn. Zooming out from one player to the system that keeps producing these messes, and what it takes to dodge the next one before it starts. Zoom out, and Ace's story isn't a one-oh-fits a symptom. Modern prospects grow up inside an economy of access. Prep circuits, NIL deals, brand reps, skills coaches, family advisors, and the one person who promises to simplify it all. That's how power concentrates in the shadows. When a manager starts scheduling workouts, shaping narratives, and whispering destinations. Teams aren't just scouting a player, they're auditing a political map. The fix starts earlier than draft week. First, transparency, roles on paper, not vibes. Agent negotiates contracts and complies with NBPA rules. Team handles development. Advisors advise without veto power. If someone wants control of calendars or media, that belongs in a written scope with accountability. Second, redundancy. Young stars need 2 or 3 trusted adults who don't owe each other favors. A mentor with no financial stake, a certified agent, and a team performance lead can triangulate truth when pressure spikes. Third, education. NIL created leverage but also loopholes for confusion. Prospects and families should get real seminars on CBA basics, rookie scale realities, and how pre-draft perception translates to money. A canceled workout isn't just a calendar change. It's a data point that can cost millions. Fourth, red flag discipline. Any "don't draft us" posture should trigger an automatic pause. Call the agent, call the league office, confirm alignment. If answers get slippery, so should trust. Teams have responsibilities too. If they believe in a player, build a runway that outlasts noise. Clear role definition, veteran guardrails, and communication that bypasses middlemen. League-wide, there's room for a pre-draft governance check briefings where prospects confirm, on record, who speaks for them on scheduling and medical disclosures. Not to police ambition, but to protect teenagers from becoming leverage for someone else's agenda. Ace made the hard pivot, separating from the voice that nearly capsized his first impression. That matters beyond his box scores. Because the real lesson isn't about a single handler or a single franchise. It's the reminder that talent wins only when power stops trying to script the ending. And that brings us to the closing question. What does Ace write next? Now that the pen is finally in his own hands, Ace Bailey's story isn't just about one draft pick gone sideways. It's a reminder of how fast power can shift when the wrong person holds the pen. One handler, one strategy, and a few quiet phone calls nearly changed everything before his career even began. But by taking control back, Ace flipped the script. The spotlight's his now. What he does next will decide whether this was just a headline or the beginning of a legacy.